Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today we're going to go live on multiple platforms. We're on Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And what I'm going to do here is give you a quick introduction to the stream, and then we're just going to start building. So I want to make sure that anybody watching the stream after the fact is fully aware that there's going to be timestamps, that the recording is going to be posted on the AppRight YouTube channel. And then we'll just go ahead and get started. So let me introduce you to what this stream is about. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and learn how to build a drag and drop feature with JavaScript here. So no external tools, just JavaScript. We're going to show a quick demo of an application that I'm putting a full tutorial out about. And then we're going to actually build out one of the minimalist features. So today what we're going to do is we're going to build out this drag and drop feature. So it's a simple application, simple website, and the feature is pretty minimalist, but from here, what we're going to do is actually extend this into a notes application. This is something that's going to be a full tutorial later. So I put out a couple of posts on this. So what I'll do here is just demo the application. I'll show you how to actually clone the repo for this code right here, because this is actually already live. It's in the video description on YouTube. And then we'll go ahead and actually clone it, set it up, set up an AppRight backend. We'll make sure that you're aware of how to set this up locally. And then we'll get into part 2 of this stream where we're going to build this out completely from scratch. So let me just go ahead and adjust my screen. I just want to make sure that we have the full width here. And here is the actual source code to this project. Again, it's linked up in the video description. So while we're getting started, let's just watch the chat here. I see a couple people saying hello. So Hijabi Coder, welcome. Good to have you here. I'm going to check Twitter here real quick, make sure we're all live there as well. First time on Twitter. Okay, so let's talk about the application. Let's go ahead and get started. So the application here, this is a notes application, and there's some cool features here. So if you notice, the notes that I'm looking at right now are actually, these are notes that I actually used for myself for this stream as I was prepping things. So right here, we have the basic drag and drop features. As I click on a note, the latest note will actually jump to the front. So if I click on this pink note right here, it goes ahead and moves forward. Now, if we want to add a new note, we simply click this plus button. We can go ahead and change the color. So I can go ahead and just use this color picker right here. We can add notes, and as I'm adding the notes, everything just expands. And then if we want to delete it, we just hit that trash icon right there. Now, the cool thing here is that whenever I move around notes, anytime I make updates, we are automatically saving these updates. And I'm actually going to show you how to do this in this video with that minimalist application with this one right here. So essentially what's happening is if I go ahead and do a hard refresh, so I'm going to do Control-Shift-R, we're going to refresh the screen. We'll notice that everything's saved. This is actually using an AppRight backend. So if I move all my notes to the left here, typically what would happen is when I refresh this, all this would just get repositioned back if this was static data, but this is all going to be saved. So if I run that again, we'll do Control-Shift-R, those positions are saved. So if you have questions about this, go ahead and ask those in the chat. We're going to start going through this one by one. And let's see, am I missing any features? I did have a note for myself to kind of go over these features. So we have drag and drop. We have the save position features. We are able to change the colors. We have full CRUD operations, and you notice that we're able to update without actually clicking an update button. It's a lot like if you're working on a Google Drive file where you're typing and it's automatically being saved for you. So we have the autosave, drag and drop, or drag expand on keyframe, and then we can even go outside of the frame here. So if I decide to zoom out, I can actually move these applications or move these notes way outside of frame. So if I zoom back in, I know that the functionality isn't fully complete. I'd like to be able to just click and drag, but we do have this scroll button here. So I'm able to actually go ahead and move way out of the original frame here. So if I need extra space for my notes, I can actually take care of that. And it looks like when I'm zooming in and out, that scroll bar or the auto resizing doesn't really work. So let's start with part 1. So again, this is all going to be timestamped. Let's go ahead and actually first talk about cloning this repo. We'll actually set this up. So anybody watching the recording, or if you want to do this live, you can actually have this application on your local desktop. And then we'll get into part 2 where we build this out from scratch. So let's go ahead and do this. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just turn off my server. I want to make sure that this is all turned off so I can set this application up from scratch. And we're going to go ahead and go into this GitHub repo. And I just wrote these notes up, so I'm sure there's some spelling errors in here, but we're just going to go ahead and actually follow my instructions here on how to set this up. So we have the app features listed out in this repo. the first step here is to clone it. We go ahead and run some installations. Then we set up an AppWrite backend. And we just have to set up a couple of attributes inside of a collection that we're going to create. And then we're going to grab our settings, or basically our project configuration settings, our project ID and such. So basic stuff like that. Bring that into our environment variables, and then we'll run our server. Okay. Backend is definitely not dead. So looking back at the question here, or yeah, AppWrite has a different place in this process. So it takes care of your backend, but depending on what you're trying to build out, the type of application, it doesn't mean that you don't have a need to build out your custom backends. There's still plenty of use cases for that. So we'll get into the questions later, but I just wanted to address that one. It doesn't mean that there's no reason to build out a custom backend, but services like AppWrite do make this a lot easier and can take care of a lot of your use cases. So let's go ahead and actually clone this repo and set all of this up. So what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and open up my terminal, and we're just going to get started. So let's get this set up. I'll zoom in here. We'll CD into my desktop, and this is where I'm going to set it up. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and just clone this repo. Oh, and I just realized I'm not sharing my entire window. Give me a second. But I need to reset this. Okay, share screen, and I need to share the entire window. Okay, there we go. So from here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and clone the repo. So just like the instructions say, we're going to start with cloning everything. So we're going to clone the repo, git clone. And again, this is for project number 1, just to set things up. So once that's ready, we're going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code and open up the project files here. Give me a second. I'm just switching between screens right now. Okay, so let's go into my desktop, and we have Sticky Notes. So this is what we just cloned. This is the project here. So go ahead and zoom in. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and make sure I'm CD'd into the project. So I'm CD'd into it. I'm already here, so I don't need to do that because I opened it up in VS Code. The terminal's automatically there, and I just need to run some installations now. So we'll just run npm install, and this will install everything from package.json. This will get me all the code here. And let me just split screen this real quick. Okay, so we run the installations. The next step is to set up an account on AppWrite. So we're going to create an AppWrite backend right now. So we can just go to appwrite.io. If you don't have an account, go ahead and set this up. You can use AppWrite Cloud. You can also set up a local instance. From here, I'm just going to go ahead and call this Sticky live stream, or Sticky Notes live, like that, and I'll zoom in. So I'm setting up a new project. If you don't have an account, create one, and then go ahead and start with this project. We're going to create one here, and we'll just go ahead and give this a second as it creates. Okay, new project has been created, and let me just refresh this. I had a little lag in my network here. Okay, so I have my new project. From here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and first create I'm going to add a platform. Sorry. I'm going to add a platform here, and I am using the web platform. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. And for this, I'm just going to call this my app for the name. This part doesn't matter. We can name it whatever we want. And localhost, this is where we can decide where we're porting in from. So this is basically the allowed host that can actually access this application. So I'm developing locally. So this will be local host. So we'll add that in, go ahead and set this up. So typically you go through this process of installing AppWrite. We're going to skip this because we have this all set up, and we'll just go ahead and create that. So the first thing I'm going to do here is go ahead and just grab my project ID. This I'm going to bring into my env file. So that's where everything's coming from. So if I go into my AppWrite configurations, we're porting everything from our env file. So I'll quickly just create that and make sure things are added. In fact, what I'm going to do here is just copy this .example env file, and we'll just do .env like that. Okay, so we'll bring that in. And from here, I'm going to grab my project ID. This backend process will take a couple of seconds here, or a couple of minutes. It's going to be pretty quick. So we'll grab the project ID, and then we also want the project endpoint. So this is going to be, actually, if I just go ahead and go to overview, I can just go ahead and grab my project API endpoint. We'll throw that in right here. And we need to create a database and a collection. Okay, so Let's go ahead and create a database. I'm going to create one called prod for production. We'll create that. And once we create a database, we'll grab that database ID. We'll paste that into our env file. And we're going to go ahead and create a collection. And this is going to be called notes. And this will also generate an ID for us. So we'll grab the notes ID and we'll paste that in right here. Okay, so we've created that. And the last thing for our AppWrite backend is we need to go ahead and create some attributes and set our permissions for this collection. So we'll go into the settings tab. And right now we're just going to make sure that anybody can create, read, update, and delete to this specific collection. So it's important to set this up right here. If you try to connect to it without setting this up, it's going to give you issues. I see Florin pops in here. Good to see you, Florin. Welcome to the chat. So let's go ahead and get back to this. Now we can create our attributes. I just want to make sure my permissions were saved. So from here, we'll go ahead and create the attributes. So what I'm going to need here is a body attribute for the note body. And for the size, I'll just set this to 1000. And we'll just go ahead and leave everything else as is. And then what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and create a text attribute for my colors. And I'm just going to go ahead and set this size to 1000 as well. So what I'm going to do here is actually save something like a JSON object in here where we'll say something like header color, and then this will be the hex color. So whatever, not dollar symbol. So whatever that value is going to be, that's how we're going to save it. So we're basically going to stringify this data, and then we're going to go ahead and actually parse it on the other end to get these values. So that's why the actual colors are just going to be a string value. So we have colors, and then the last thing we're going to create is going to be our position. So the position is going to be the position of each note. Can't spell position there. So for the size, I'm also going to set this to 1000. And this will also be an object where we'll have something like the X and Y coordinates. So we'll just do X, and then that'll be like a position on the actual screen, and then Y, and then that's also going to be stringified, saved here as a string, and then brought back and parsed out. Okay, so we have the basic attributes. Now what I need to do is go ahead and actually, I believe I just need to run my server. So I added in my AppWrite credentials, and now I'm ready to just go ahead and run this application. So for those of you that wanted to set this up locally, make sure you're following along. So we ran the installation, we set up our backend, we added our credentials. Let's just go ahead and save everything. And I should be able to run npm run dev. Okay, let's see if I did everything correctly. So if I go to inspect element, let's check our console. Let's try to refresh this. Cannot read property of parent element. Okay, I actually know what that issue is. So at this point, that's basically an issue on the front end, and I'll fix that. What's happening is I'm selecting an item right away. When we first load the page, by default, we're supposed to grab the first element, and that issue is happening because we don't have any items here. So let's go ahead and just create an item. So right now we created our first item. If I go ahead and just say my to-do list, just add in item 1, item 2. Okay, so now if I refresh it, I should be able to see this, and it should be saved in my database. So if I update the colors, I can go ahead and add in a second item. We'll bring this in right here. We'll make this one green. Just add in some information, and let's bring in a blue. And let's check our backend. So at this point, I can go into my documents, and if I refresh my backend here, we now see these documents inside of our collection here. So if I go ahead and just open these up, so we'll notice that right here, my first item, if we look at the actual data, we see my to-do list right here. So basically the data is stringified and it's saved. And then we actually have the colors. Here we have the ID of the color type, and then the actual values for the text color, the body color, and then the actual position values of these items. So that's it for setting up the backend. We got that complete, and anybody following along, you should be able to get to this step and actually have this set up locally. So let's get to the fun part where we learn how to build out one of these features. So again, what I talked about was we're going to learn how to build this drag around feature with JavaScript. So we're going to learn how to drag elements around, and then we're going to learn how to auto save it. So essentially what I have here is this function that runs every 5 seconds. And anytime there's an update, those updates get queued up. So if we have a position change or a color change to one of these items, that gets added into a queue inside of a local state. and then we run that function, check if we have any items to update, and then we run that item. So that's also what we're going to learn how to do. So let's go ahead and get into that fun section. So we'll close this out. Again, this will be time-stamped. I see people are joining. We're doing 2 projects here. Anybody watching the recording after the stream, you'll be able to actually see where we're working on each project and what we did there. So let's go ahead and close this out. And this one should be off. So if I go ahead and refresh that, I need to make sure to turn everything off here. Okay, so I'll turn off my server. Make sure I have my other VS Code tab closed out. And let's just start this from scratch here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and actually create a blank folder here, or a new folder, and we're going to do this the old school way. So we're going to call this drag and drop. So let's just do that. We'll do drag. Actually, let me rename this, and we'll do drag and drop. So we'll just use the letter N there, and we'll get this opened up. Need to open up a new window here. Let's go ahead and open up drag and drop. Okay, so in this project here, making sure we start from scratch, we're going to create an index.html file, and we'll create a main.css file, and we're also going to create a, main.js. And inside of HTML, we'll get some boilerplate here. Go ahead and make sure that we just go ahead and create that boilerplate code, give it a name, drag and drop, move this JavaScript file underneath our body tag, just because we need everything to load first, and then we want to actually call the script right there. So we want to call that later, and we're all linked up to our main.css and main.js file. So going into the GitHub repo that I provided, and I'll just move this into another tab. Let's go ahead and actually grab some basic code here. So what I want to do here is just grab some styling for this backend, and then I want to grab this color right here before we actually get started. So I'm going to take this from the original repo, and we're only going to take a little bit of that code. So not all of it. Most of this we're going to build out from scratch, but just a little bit of the styling, we'll just bring this in manually. So we're going to take everything from root down to card here, and we'll just grab all of that, and we're going to bring this in right here into main.css. Okay, so in here, I don't need this header, so we'll just get rid of that. We have our styling for our background. So what I need to do is go ahead and create a div here called app, or a div with the ID of app. And we're going to create a div inside of here. So we're only going to have one item that we're actually going to drag around, and this is going to have the ID of card. Actually, we'll give it the class name of card, just because in the future, we're going to want multiple cards. So we'll just go ahead and create it that way. So we have the app right here. We have the card. Let's go ahead and set a height to this, and we'll just do 400 pixels. And I also want to set a background color. Just want to make sure we can actually see this. And let's just go ahead and do aquamarine right there. And let's see. So what I'm going to need to do is go ahead and open this up. So I'm using live server, so you can just open up that file directly. In VS Code, I have this extension where I can use live server, and this will go ahead and set that up for me. And it looks like I have another tab running on that port, so I need to make sure that's closed out. And we can do Control-Shift-R, and here we go. Okay, so right now, let's just recap that styling. So we basically have a height and width, a background color, some basic styling for the card, and we have a absolute position. So what I'm going to do right now is actually change this to fixed, and we just have a box shadow on the card. So then we have a background styling. This is where you're seeing this grid layout right here. If I zoom in a little bit, you should be able to see it. And then we have just some basic styling for the body and some root styling for font and everything else in our application. So from here, let's go ahead and actually start adding the styling. So we have our index.html file, we have an app wrapper, and then an actual card. So right now that's a fixed element, and what we want to do is go ahead and start being able to move this around. So give me 1 second. I need to open up a quick demo. So I'm going to have some code that I'm going to reference here so I can actually follow along here. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to set up some boilerplate here. So what I'm going to do here is first create some positions. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need a starting position for our current cursor. So what we're going to do is basically follow the movements of our cursor. We want to know where those positions are. We want to know where the last position was. And then we're going to add event listeners to actually be able to move that square around. So we'll just go ahead and create some variables here. So we'll call this new X, and this will be 0. So that's going to be the X position. Set that to 0. And then we're also going to do new Y for the Y position. This will be 0. And then we'll also do start X. Everything is going to start off at 0 at the beginning and then end X. So this needs to be X right here. And we're going to do end X. And that's also 0. So that's the first thing we're doing is we're just going to go ahead and set those default values. We have those positions. And from here, we want to go ahead and get our card. So we're going to do const document.get element by class name, or actually we'll do get elements by class names. Cards. Give me a second. Sorry, I'm like doing too much at once. Document.get elements by class name. And we're just going to get the card. And this is going to return back an HTML collection. So we're going to get the first item by grabbing the 0 index. And then what we'll do here is we're just going to go ahead and add an event listener for the mouse down event. So when we click on the card, we need a function that actually listens for that mouse down event. So we're going to create a function called mouse down. So that's when we actually press it down on the square. And here, what we're going to do, first of all, I'm actually going to console this out, console.log, and we'll just say mouse triggered. Mouse down triggered. Okay. And we can add this event listener to the card. So we'll just do card.add event listener, and then we'll do on mouse down. This will be the mouse down event. Okay, so let's just start from scratch here. Make sure it's all working. So as I click it, it's kind of like a click event, except for we can actually hold the actual mouse if we need to, and that's what allows us to drag it. So it's counting all the mouse downs right here. So that's how we can see that. Okay, so from mouse down, what do we want to do here? So first thing I want to do is go ahead and get the current positions. So we're going to get the start X position, and we're going to set this to e.client X here. So it's going to get the current mouse position. And then we'll do start Y. And this will be e.client. And this is going to be client Y. So on mouse down, what I'm going to do is actually just move this right here. And I just realized, let's see, start Y. What did I do wrong here? Give me a second. Oh, this is supposed to be start X right here, not end X. Okay, so we have start X, start Y, new X, new Y. Okay, so start Y. So let's go ahead and just grab these two. And let's see what happens. So as I click on it, we're going to get the current position. E is not defined. We'll bring this in. So we see the current position of the mouse, and it changes everywhere, or regardless of, depending on where I click, those values change. So we have the X and Y coordinates. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So as we click on it, we want to get those values, and we want to create a mouse move event. So we want to be able to actually move this around and change where we're at here. So let's go ahead and create a new function, and this is going to be called mouse move. So mouse move, and I'm used to creating arrow functions, so it always throws me off when I have to write out the function keyword like this. So we're also going to pass in the event here. And with mouse move, what we're going to do here is we're just going to go ahead and actually get the new X position. And we're going to set this to start X right here. And we'll get new Y. And this will be start Y. So we want to set the new positions to these values right here, minus e.client X, and then e.client Y. And I'll go down and actually break this up as I start coding this out. So at this point, let's go ahead and actually change the card position. So before we add all this in, I just want to go ahead and console these out. So let's go ahead and grab new X and new Y. And then as I'm dragging this around, we'll add this into mouse down. So we click mouse down, and then we want to go ahead and add an event listener to the card here. So we'll do document.getElement by ID. Or sorry, not get element by ID, but we'll just add an entire event listener to the entire document here. So document.add event listener, and this one's going to be mouse move. And on mouse move, we're going to trigger the mouse move event. Okay, so let's try this out. So we have mouse down, and as I move around, we see that position changing right here. So everything's getting updated. We see our positions. Okay, so that's what we needed. So we have mouse down, and from here, what I can do is just go ahead and actually set the card values. So we'll do card dot style top. So remember, it's a fixed position. So we're going to be able to actually just go ahead and actually update the card position itself. So we're just going to do card dot style dot top, and this is going to be equal to, let's just actually do e dot client y, because I want to show an issue here real quick, and then we'll just do plus px. So we want to set the actual value here, and we'll do this for the left position. So for now, let's just go ahead and comment that out, and this will be left right here. This will be client x. Okay, so when I click it, here we go. I'm able to move this around. So we have a few issues. So right now, first of all, the issue here is if I click, let's say on this bottom part of the card, what happens is by default, the card actually moves to the bottom right of the actual mouse here. So the card gets moved down. So we don't want to do that. We want to be able to grab a card from any position, like right here, and then move it down. So you notice how it's stuck here. And then also, when I let go of the mouse, it still stays with me. So right now, I'm not touching it. If I'm moving it around like that, it still stays with us. So we also need to create an event that listens for a mouse up event, basically when we're done, and then we want to remove that mouse move event listener. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll fix that positioning of the card here. So for this, we're going to create another function. This is going to be called mouse up. And then on mouse up, what we want to do here is just go ahead and do document dot remove event listener. And this is going to be mouse move, and we're going to remove mouse move here. So mouse up is also going to be added, and this is going to be added right here. So we're going to add that to the document. So this is all on mouse down. So both of these events get added once mouse down is clicked. And then we're going to move this to mouse up, and then this will be mouse up right here. Okay, so I should be able to grab it, move it, and then let go, grab it again, and move it around. Okay, so we have that much complete. So you notice that weird positioning, it just goes all of a sudden to this spot. So what we're going to do here is this is where we need to calculate how we're going to position the actual card. So we'll move back into mouse move. So we get the new position, and that's derived from getting the start position and then the current mouse position right here. From this section, we want to reset the start position. So once we actually use start X and start Y to calculate this, we're going to grab start X and set this to the new position, which is e.client.x. So client X, and then we'll do this for Y. So we're just resetting the position for the next move. So we'll reset that. And then for the actual card styling, this, instead of just setting the position based on the current mouse movement, we're going to recalculate this, and I'm going to bring this right here. So I just want to comment those out, and we're going to set this to, let's see, let's just calculate this real quick. This is going to be card.offset top, and I'll explain this after, minus new Y, and then we can just do plus PX right here. Okay, and then we can do the same for this one right here, card offset left, and this is going to be new X. Okay, so let's give it a test first. So now when I grab it, I should be able to just, oh, now it's not working at all. Okay, invalid left hand assignment, card offset left minus new X. Oh, this is supposed to be plus, not equals. Hey, I see Danny's in the chat. Good to see you, Danny. Okay, so let's try this now. Okay, so here we go. It's working. Let me zoom out. And I'm now able to grab this card and move it around, let go, move around, and then grab it again. So you notice that when I grab it, if I grab it on the top right, it stays right here. If I grab it right here, it doesn't get repositioned. If I grab it in the center, that works fine. If I don't run this calculation, let's say I use the original method where I simply update the card top and left position to the current mouse position, what's going to happen is the card is always going to move here. So technically the top and left part of the mouse or of the card right here are going to be where the current mouse is. So let me explain what's happening here. So right here, when we're clicking or when we're calculating this, what we're doing here is we're grabbing the old position and we're simply calculating the moves made here. So we're calculating the distance from top left from the new Y position, and new Y is calculated from the start position to E. So if I'm actually canceling this out, we'll notice the movement. So if I move down, we'll notice -1. So it runs this quite a bit because I'm moving in every move is a pixel here. Trying to figure out how to represent this best. So let's try to move it just down. So if I move it down, we'll notice 1, 1, and then I moved it a little bit left right here too. So it's basically moving it 1 pixel every single time. We should have some of these where it's like a 0 and a 1. It's a little bit hard to explain and show here. But essentially, we're calculating that distance right there, and we're calculating how far we need to move it. And then the card doesn't get repositioned because we're simply moving it that specific distance as opposed to just tracking the mouse here. So that explanation was a little bit hard to make, but yeah, that's how we're able to derive it. We were getting those positions and then repositioning it the entire time, and it's literally calculating on every single movement. Now, what I want to do next here is I want to go ahead and just make sure that anytime we're refreshing this, so right now we start at the top left, I want to make sure that anytime we refresh this, so let's say we move this to the right, that this value is actually saved. So we're not going to have a backend like with this application right here. So we're not actually going to save the values in a backend. What we're going to do is just save the current X and Y coordinates inside of local storage, but it's going to use a method that we used in the last project here. So essentially what's going to happen is I could do this a few ways. I can wait till the card is finished moving and then update that and save that in local storage. The problem with that is when I'm building this notes application, there's so many cards, and I also need to listen for different type of events. So I need to listen to color changes. I need to listen for text updates. So essentially what we're going to do here is simply just queue up any changes that we have and then run a function every 5 seconds that actually saves these values. So let's just try to go through this and see how I can explain it. Okay. So first of all, what I'm going to do here is create a queue, and this is going to be a variable called to be saved. I just realized my headphones are all tied up on here. So we're going to create a queue called to be saved, and this will simply be an object. So we only have one card here, so we technically could make this a little bit simpler, but because in the future we're going to have multiple cards, we're going to queue this up with multiple values that we can throw in here. So this is going to be that local store right here. So from this point, what I'm going to do is go ahead and run a function, and this function is going to run every five seconds. So we'll just call this save data, and we'll finish up the function here. What we'll do in here is we're going to iterate through this save data. So if we have any values in here, we're going to go ahead and take those values and then save them in local storage. So we'll just do object.keys, and we're going to iterate through this. So to be saved, we'll pass that in right there, and we'll just do for each. We'll iterate through it. So we'll create a function in here, and we'll get the key. So the key will be either X or Y. We'll get the key value. And from here, we're just going to do local storage dot set item, and this will be the key value and then the actual value itself. So we'll do to be saved and then get that actual value by its key. And then we're going to set that in local storage. Now, once that's done, we want to just go ahead and delete that key. So if we don't have any values, we don't want to update the local state. So if we're actually sending this data back to a backend, we don't want to actually have to consistently send read or write events back to our database. That's going to be costly. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure to only perform these actions when we have something queued up to actually be saved here. So we'll just do to be saved, and then we'll grab the current key here, and then we'll just delete it. So once it's updated in local storage, we'll delete it. Now from here, what we want to do is go ahead and actually queue up that local storage or that local state in mouse up. So once the mouse is done moving, this is where we want to queue up the events. So we'll just go ahead and do to be saved. And the first value I'm going to pass in is going to be the X coordinate. So we'll just start X, and this is going to be equal to JSON.stringify. And we can just go ahead and throw in the current position in there. So we can actually grab this right here, card offset, and then we'll start with the left value, throw that in here. And then for the Y position, so we basically want the card to start at the last position that it was saved. So we'll do start Y, and then this will be offset top right here. Okay, start Y, start X, and this will be new Y. Okay, so from here, what we want to do is just go ahead and make sure this function is run every 5 seconds. So we'll just do set interval, and we'll call save data, and this will be run every, let's do 1 second at this point, and we'll just do console.log, checking for data to be saved. And then if we're saving anything for updating, we'll just do console.log, and we'll just say updated. Let's actually use backticks here, and I want to get the value here. So we'll just do updated, and then we'll pass in the current key. Okay, so let's give this a shot and see what happens. So if I go ahead and inspect element, so we're checking for save data. Right now, we'll notice that we're not actually updating anything. Then if I move it, it updated the X and Y position, and then it keeps checking, and then it doesn't update it until we actually have something new in there. Now, if I want to run this, let's say every 3 seconds, let's go ahead and try this one more time. So we see right now, it's waiting 1, 2, 3. It's checking for save data, nothing to be saved. We'll move it right here, and we're waiting 1, 2, 3, and then it just updated the start X and Y position. Now, if I go into application, let's go into local storage. Here, I should be able to see those coordinates actually be updated. So I need to give myself some space here. So we see start X and start Y. If I move it, give it a second, these positions will change right here. So now it's 120 and 86, and then it's 113 and 483, and that keeps getting updated. Okay, so that's the first part of it. The next part is to start the position right here. We want to go ahead and actually update the card placement based on that position from local storage. So let's go ahead and actually just remove this since we don't need this anymore. And what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and grab the start X and start Y positions, and we're going to get this from local storage. So we'll just do json.parse. So we want to parse this information, and then we'll do local storage dot get item. And this is going to be start X right here. So start will now be derived from local storage, and then we can grab this same method right here, and we'll set that for start Y. So instead of 0, we're going to do start Y. Okay, so that gets those values. Next thing I want to do is go ahead and actually update the card once it's first loaded. So we get the first card here. So we get it by class name. We get the first card, and we can do card.style.top. And this is going to be equal to start Y. And then we can do the same for start X. And then this will be left. And now when I update this, so let's go ahead and move this right here. And then if I refresh it, it's going to stay. So you notice how it stays right here. So once I move it again, if I refresh it too early, it actually won't update. So what I could do is just go ahead and make sure this runs every second. Let's just do 1, save it, and we can move it right here. And every time I click refresh right here, this stays in position. Again, if I do Control-Shift-R, it's there. So that's it. I see we got Design Chorus, Danny Thompson. Awesome, awesome. Gary Simon, thank you for the support. Anybody have any questions in the chat, let me know. That's it for the actual tutorial. So again, we have the notes application. We went over this right here. This is going to be a full tutorial later. We learned how to clone this, how to set up the AppWrite backend, and how to connect it. And then we built out this drag and drop feature from scratch. It's actually very simple once it makes sense, something that I was curious about myself for a while. So I thought it'd be fun to show everybody. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and call the stream unless we have any questions. We'll wait like maybe 15 more seconds and see if I miss anything. So let's see. Nathaniel Young, AppWrite, one question I have an object like, sorry, I don't get the question. If you can maybe rephrase that. All right. Well, I guess we can just call it there. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And I'll see you all in the next video, in the next stream. Let's see if this successfully closes out from X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I want to make sure that StreamYards can actually take care of all those at once.